Okay. All right, says it's 5, so maybe on.
Get ready.
Be ready. If folks are here. Keon, can you tell us if it's working? Otherwise, I will troubleshoot it. Or I could look myself, I suppose. If folks are here, hi. Sorry for the lack of knowledge. All right. Okay, looks like it's live, and there's some folks joining. Welcome to the folks who are joining. We'll give it a couple minutes for folks to get here. So in the meantime, feel free to chat us hello, your name, and where you're tuning in from. It's like
I'm on location in my backyard.
Where's your backyard? Where's on location?
On location is in the Wasatch Mountains of Utah. It's a lovely day here.
Yeah, it's a lovely day here in Sacramento, too. It's finally not over 100. It might be over 100 right now, actually. I might be lying. But, nope, 92, which is so much better than 115, let me tell you.
Yeah, I'll say. These are the months I wait for. It's really quite balmy. It's just in the lower 80s, upper 70s. But it's not. It's cool at night. We're just to the point where solidly in the 40s at night. We've had one night where it was above 50, but it's cool at night here.
Yeah, it cools down here too. That's one of the things that's really nice. So we'll get started in a few minutes, folks. Thanks for joining us. In the meantime, chat us hello. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Share this video, share this post on your page so that you can tell your friends that you're here and tell them to join us. And we'll get started maybe at another minute. And also, if you're tuning in because you already know that you've got questions, you could even start to post them right now. We'll wait to get to them, but no harm in letting us know what you are hoping we'll talk about by posting a comment at any time. We've got 3 after. Keon says things are working okay. And let's see, Keon, can everybody hear us okay? Can you hear us okay? And if so, then maybe we'll go ahead and get started. But I just want
Yay!
Let's make sure sound's all right first.
How's my sound?
I think I can hear you all right, but in the past, folks have had some trouble. I don't know. He's not telling us. Keon, you there? Sound check?
Sound check.
Maybe that's a bad sign. Oh, yep, he says he can hear us.
Okay, very good then. So
let's go ahead and start.
Let's get rolling. So greetings, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Move to Amend's monthly live stream, the Move to Amend Report. This is a space where you can learn about what's going down in the movement to amend the U.S. Constitution and legalize democracy. I'm your host, Laura Bonham, Move to Amend National Board Member, and I'm here with Kaitlin Saposi-Belknap, our National Director. We really encourage your participation as we go along, so if you have any questions for the national team, make a comment during the live stream, and we will answer your question in real time.
Yep, and we also want to welcome any suggestions that you have for improvement, so please let us know how the live stream is working for you. And right now, you can post in the comments where you're tuning in from. Keon is working the comments, so he'll be posting links and follow-up details about the projects and events that we're going to be referencing. And you can let us know you're here by posting a comment to tell us where you're tuning in from, and if you're active with Move to Amend yet in your community.
We wanted to start this month's report talking about the upcoming Democracy Convention in Minneapolis, Minnesota this summer, August 2nd through 6th. I'm so excited. Move to Amend is organizing one of 8 different conferences that fall under the banner of this Democracy Convention. The different conferences that will be happening at once are the Community and Economic Democracy Conference, the Earth Rights and Global Democracy Conference, Educated United for Democracy Conference, Media Democracy Conference, Peace and Democracy Conference, Racial Justice for Democracy Conference, Representative Democracy Conference, and then Move to Amend is organizing the Democratizing the Constitution Conference.
So we wanted to talk about the Democracy Convention and why it's really important to be having this event right now. I know that it can feel like we're kind of under attack. Latest example, actually not coming down from the national government, but here in California, we were so excited about single payer and a bill for universal health care for all that was in our state legislature. And just last Friday, it was killed by the Democratic Party, actually, saying that, it needed more study and kicking it back to the Senate. So stopped it in its tracks, and everybody's trying to rally to put the pressure on and make clear that that is not acceptable. And it seems like we have to do that all the time. We're on the defense all the time. But we need to be thinking about how to get on the offense. And so the Democracy Convention comes at a really great time, I think, because I think we have now a sense of what the lay of the land is with this newer administration and this new Congress, what's happening in our communities as a result, and as a result of all the onslaught against democracy that we've been seeing for generations, really, but at an ever-quickening pace. And so we know the lay of the land, and it's really time that we all come together and take all these different aspects of the movement that Laura went through and bring them together under the umbrella or under the banner of democracy. Because really, that's what we're all fighting for, because we can't put in place any of the visions around peace, around racial justice, around economics, around community protection if we don't have power. And that's what democracy is about, right? That's what democracy is. It means that the people have the power. And that's obviously not the system that we actually have in this country and in much of the world, but that's where we need to get. And so we'll be coming together to talk about how to get there from where we are now, looking at some of the great work that people are doing across the country and kind of getting out of our silos. So on one hand, we're going to be, each having these separate conferences, but anybody who comes can participate in any of them. And at the end, we'll be doing what's called a People's Movement Assembly, where we're kind of be bringing it all together and thinking about next steps for both the rest of the year, of course, but on into the future and how we can continue to build an ever stronger democracy movement in the United States. And so we hope that everyone will join us for this important event this summer. Keon will post the link for more information or for you to register. It's in Minneapolis. It's at the beginning of August. But we also wanted to talk and kind of focus in on the work that Move to Amend will be doing at the convention and spend some time talking about why we desperately need to democratize the Constitution. That's the name of our conference. So that's what we'll be focusing on mostly at the convention. And we wanted to ask you what you think. Why do you think we would be organizing a conference with that title? I think, we learned that this is the best democracy in the world, and so our Constitution should already be democratic, right? But what are some of the ways that the Constitution actually needs to be democratized? So Laura and I are going to talk about that a little bit, actually going back to the beginning and kind of when the Constitution was created and where it came from, and contextualizing a little bit whether or not that really is a very democratic document. So I don't know. What do you think, Laura?
Well, when I go back to the beginning of the country, the founding fathers, the 1776, just pre-Revolutionary War, the very beginning of the war, I I think about being born in original sin. I mean, it's, between the near genocide of the natives of this land and the slavery, it's hard to say with a straight face at all that it was a democracy. And when you consider who the people were in the room, they were white, they were property, they were wealthy, and yes, some of them were liberal and all that kind of thing. Again, there wasn't a lot of representation of the actual population that was at hand in the room.
They were all men.
But I know you
know
yeah,
that.
They were all men.
You didn't explicitly say that.
They were all men. They were all white. But I with the July 4th weekend coming up, I can't help but, the Declaration of Independence, those first paragraphs in that document are just lightning. They're lightning in a bottle. And I read them and about our right, even these guys, it is our right to stand up when our government fails us. It is our right to stand up and create the government that we want for our health, wealth, and prosperity. And the Declaration of Independence just says it. And the Constitution is like so far away from that ideal and it was only a matter of years that, it really is frustrating. So from, having to get the Bill of Rights jammed into the Constitution, they weren't part of it.
Right. So let's pause on that for a second. So, because I like to ask people this, like when you think of the Constitution, what comes to mind? What do you think about? Right to free speech, maybe right to bear arms, protection against search and seizure, all these protections from government, right? Is that the Constitution? I mean, yes, because those amendments now are part of the Constitution, but those are amendments. That means that what was offered up first didn't include any of that. And I think that it really matters. I mean, the Declaration of Independence was a propaganda document. That was a document to try and bring people in. Hey, join us. Let's fight a war against the biggest superpower in the world. We can do it. Why? Because we have these great ideals. Then what's the Constitution? The Constitution is many of those same people saying, well, this is what we really want to see happen. And, some people might be very upset about the fact that I maybe don't exalt those founders the way that we're taught to, but the reality is that we have come a long way in this country only because people actually fought to correct all the errors that those founders embedded into our law. And it isn't like there wasn't discussion and discourse at the time. It wasn't just, well, that's how it was in the 1700s, like people were slaves. No, there was an abolitionist movement right from the beginning. There were women right there saying, why are we not in this document? All of these principles that you're spelling out in the Declaration of Independence, that sounds like stuff that could apply to us. And it was a choice to say no, and then we had subsequent Supreme Court decisions that actually continued to push people down, to uphold slavery, to uphold the fact that women had not just not a right to vote, but no rights under the law. And it took people's movements to actually amend the Constitution, to overturn basically those original founders, and also to overturn the Supreme Court, which through almost every single amendment ruled wrong and is on the wrong side of history. And then what it takes is a movement to amend the Constitution. And so that is all very critical for us to take into context as we're thinking about what this country is all about and how we got to where we are now, and the context for how it might be possible that we are now in a situation where property, which is what a corporation is, actually is able to exercise more power than human beings.
And that's why we need to democratize the Constitution in a short breath. But it's so true. I've been doing some reading. I've been rereading Thomas Paine and actually rereading some of his stuff that I'd read before, and then actually reading stuff that I had only read summaries of lately. And Thomas Paine is he's had a hard road to hoe history wise. He was blackballed back then. and he's had his moments back and forth during his time. But he was he was a real radical. And Thomas Paine was talking about poverty and income inequality back then. He was talking about abolition. He was talking about like the equivalent of a living wage. He was talking about all of these things that we assume are like these 20th century ideas. This man was trying to move forward and get people excited about so that it would translate into the new government. And so it's really fascinating reading him. And some of what he thinks even today would probably shock some people. But he's a founder that really doesn't get the respect he deserves. And and in many ways, what he was saying and talking about is like a poster boy for what we're trying to accomplish right now in terms of being participating in the process and getting people involved in part of the process. The founders, many of the other founders, looked at us all, looked out at we the people, and considered us to be a mob at the gate.
Right.
And Thomas Paine looked out at we the people and said, "Hey, this is our country."
Right. And the gate, what was the gate protecting? The gate was protecting their property, right? And so at its core, really what the Constitution was about codifying protections for the people who had property, which was not very many of us. And the case is still true that actually, we may have some land property, but in terms of wealth, it's still not very many of us who actually are able to really be shielded by the protections of the Constitution. And when the rest of us are, it's because we're asserting rights that came through amendments. And Tom Paine wasn't welcome at the Constitutional Convention. He did not help draft the Constitution. He actually boycotted the process and came out against the Constitution after it was unveiled, because remember, it was also written in a secret meeting that nobody was allowed to have access to the records of for many years. And then they came out with it, and Thomas Paine was completely against it. So that, again, just to, interrupt the narrative that everybody loved it, and it was just the times were what they were, and then we all evolved. If we hadn't actually had people's movements where people were willing to put their lives on the line, we wouldn't have evolved. We would have just stayed on that path of slavery and indentured servitude and all of that.
And another little known fact about this current Constitution that we have is in that second Constitutional Convention, when they were behind closed doors, they basically just put the other Constitution aside and created a new one. What they did was not within the rules of the original Constitution. So they just kind of it was basically a coup. Yeah. Because they didn't follow the rules in any shape, way, or form. So that I find really interesting, that, the second Constitution is really just kind of they just threw the first one out and said, oh, well, we don't like this one, so we don't have to follow the rules. Let's write a new one.
Right. And that other one was a lot more, there was a lot more elements of popular democracy, especially around economics. There still were problems, we still had many of the states wanted to be slave states, and, so that was a whole debate. But there was less federalist control, which is actually, part of what was initially used for the beginning to make sure that the slave states were protected. And ultimately, they, kind of lost that grip on the power at the federal government level, and so, we had the Civil War. But that took a while to get there. So we think that it's really important that we kind of understand this context for what got us to where we are now, and the steps along the way, and who's really responsible for the best parts of the Constitution. And also thinking about how could we go beyond, because one of the things about the U.S. Constitution is, because of the whole setup, the sort of liberal setup around, that it's all about what powers government cannot exercise against us, which is obviously very important to protect us against tyranny and, unfair practices on the part of the government. But what we don't really have is any place where the government is responsible for guaranteeing that we have our full human potential, as part of participating in, the human experience. So what I mean by that is, affirmative rights. So, yeah, we have a right to free speech, meaning that the government cannot infringe on our free speech. But actually, when we're at work, corporations can infringe on our free speech because that's not actually a protection that we have under the First Amendment, just to be able to express ourselves. So folks who might want to be organizing a union in their workplace are absolutely not allowed to talk about that at work when you're together doing their job. And you could be fired if who you're working for finds out. And that's just one example. But also, what about, universal health care and a right to health care? What about a right to clean water? What about a right for a place to have a roof over your head? What about a right to income that, doesn't have to be exorbitant, but actually makes it so you can meet your basic needs? And then potentially actually do work that is meaningful to you and would allow you to bring your best self forward. I mean, those things sound like pie in the sky because we've been told that that's all pie in the sky. But when we think about, what are we here on this earth to do? We're here to, have community with each other. We want to have, meaningful lives. We want to have relationships. We want to do good. And why is our government not set up? Our government, which is where we all come together and agree on how we're going to live together in society, why is that not set up in a way that is meant to facilitate all of those things? And that's something that some other countries actually do a better job of in their constitutions that have come after the United States Constitution. So it's also not just something that's theoretical. We actually could be putting human rights into our Constitution in ways like South Africa has, in ways like a lot of countries in Europe do a better job of. And also, what about, the UN Declaration of Human Rights? All of that could be stuff that we think about how we want to codify that in our Constitution. So it's not just we got a bad start and we've fixed some things, but also we're kind of keeping ourselves in the box of what's possible, again, because of that initial, well, what matters most is property and government actually having no say over our property. And that is such a small, small piece of what liberty entails.
Boy, is it ever. And all this talking about the Constitution, the Constitutional Convention, the Democracy Convention, to me, this is almost like part of a constitutional convention. If the people were to get together, because it begins in places and people talk and then it goes to another place and people talk and ideas spread and they come back and forth and it builds and it builds and it builds. And so if the people were to write a constitution, to write the Constitution or would have written it back then, this is how it would work. There would be conventions and different areas of expertise that people learn, and then they come together and they talk and they figure it out. So I really look at the Democracy Convention as we the people putting our toes into the pool of a constitutional convention, into the waters of a constitutional convention.
Ultimately, I mean, it is true that for its flaws that have been corrected, part of why that's possible is because you can amend the Constitution, and potentially you could amend it in some really big ways. And one of the processes is a convention, and we might be due for that. And we have some work to do in the meantime, right? We talked about this last month, a convention. We have some work to do in the meantime to make sure that there is an elevated education in this country around caring about other people, so that such a convention would not be about people sort of looking in and figuring out how to, guard against other people, and take away their rights, but rather to look expansively. So we still have work to do. We're not saying, hey, we're ready for a convention, but part of how you get to the big places is you vision them and then you start walking in that direction. So that's what will be happening at the Democracy Convention, and we'll be zeroing in on the Constitution. We definitely will be talking a lot about Move to Amend and this movement for the 28th Amendment, because we see that as a critical first step on this path. And so this doesn't mean that we're abandoning that in any way. To the contrary, we're going to be focusing in and bringing anybody who's there into the movement to amend, and also thinking about beyond the 28th Amendment as well. So it'll be really exciting, and I hope that this has gotten everyone's juices flowing a bit, and that you're excited to join us in August. You're all invited, and we hope to see you there. Also, we're fundraising right now to make
it's really affordable.
Yes,
it's really
it is really affordable. It is. It's at the University of Minnesota. There's housing on campus. There's food on campus, and the conference itself. None of us are getting paid for this. I work for Move to Amend, so in a way I am. But the convention is kind of something that a lot of people bring to make happen on top of our regular work, because we really believe in it, and because because of that, it's probably one of the most affordable conferences that you can find out there. And it's really actually 8 conferences at once. So talk about bang for your buck. So we are fundraising right now to make the event possible, and also to ensure that we have a scholarship fund for folks who otherwise wouldn't be able to make it. So if you can kick in some dollars to help us with that, we'd really appreciate it. Keon will post the link for how you can donate, and thanks to everybody who has already chipped in so far on the campaign to fund our conference at the Democracy Convention. So let's get to the usual program of this live report.
Well, we had a big June. We have highlights from June. First of all, HJR, House Joint Resolution 48, the We the People Amendment, was introduced January 30th. We're up to 44 co-sponsors. This month we picked up 3 new co-sponsors: Representative Jim McGovern of Massachusetts, Representative Karen Bass of California, and Representative Earl Perlmutter of Colorado. Kudos, thanks, reps. And our goal was 35 by the end of the year, so we're doing absolutely great. Another goal for this year is to get a companion amendment introduced in the Senate, and we're moving in that direction. Kaitlin, tell us what happened when you went to D.C. this month. How did it go?
Yeah, so thanks. So I was in D.C. at the beginning of the month, and I want to give a shout out to Fran R. from Philadelphia and Fran O. from the D.C. area, who both joined me as volunteers to do all these meetings that we did. So we met with a number of senators, and we didn't get any for sure yeses, but we're now in conversation as follow-up to answer people's questions and to kind of, move them along. Everybody wants to know, well, what did everybody else say? So we're kind of trying to move that forward, which is the same way that we've gotten so many co-sponsors in the House. So this is sort of the process. So if I mention your senator in this report of who we met with, please, please, please call them tomorrow and ask them to introduce a companion bill to House Joint Resolution 48. We've been also trying to ramp up the phone calls all month so that, they saw us in person, and then they're hearing from constituents that this is really important. So we met with Jon Tester from Montana. And as folks might know, Montana passed a ballot initiative. It was one of the first states to pass a ballot initiative calling for an amendment that would address our 2 points. And so Jon Tester has already indicated, support for an amendment that would address corporate constitutional rights and also money in politics. So he is one of our top candidates for coming on as an introducer in the Senate. And we're having good conversation with his staff right now. Another really good candidate that we're hopeful about is Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island. Senator Whitehouse had some very good comments at the Gorsuch hearings for the Supreme Court around the Hobby Lobby case and why corporations should not have constitutional rights. And we had a really good meeting with his counsel, that means his lawyer. So hopeful there as well. Those are, frankly, kind of our 2 best bets, but we had positive conversations with everyone else we met with too. So I don't want to discount them either. Sherrod Brown from Ohio has put out a lot of stuff to his own list around Citizens United and how important it is to overturn that case. So we're working to help make sure his staff understands that that case is just the tip of the iceberg, and also was possible because of some previous Supreme Court cases, and those need to be overturned as well. And they seemed receptive to that. We met with Al Franken and Amy Klobuchar's offices. Those are both the senators from Minnesota. We kind of zeroed in on the places where we've done the most organizing at the local level, and have like the most petition signers, and can kind of say, look, your constituents have already told you in a number of ways they want this. So in Ohio, we've passed ballot initiatives in many, many communities across the state. So that was why we focused on Sherrod Brown. In Minnesota, we have really strong support from our affiliates there. Also, Rick Nolan, our lead sponsor in the House, is from Minnesota as well, and a number of House members have signed on to HJR 48. So that's a strong state. The Democracy Convention is there, partly because of that too. We also met with Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey's offices. They're the senators from Massachusetts, and had good conversations with both of them. Folks in Massachusetts have done a lot of work. Again, a lot of ballot initiatives. Over 200 ballot initiatives have passed in Massachusetts. So these senators, if they're going to do the will of their constituents, then they will be introducing this amendment. And we just have to kind of make that connection and get it clear. Kamala Harris, who's a new senator in California, where I live, met with her office when she was campaigning. She said some things indicating interest in this issue and potential willingness to introduce an amendment, so we're trying to make sure she follows through on that. And Jeff Merkley in Oregon, another strong state where we have done a lot of work, passed resolutions through city councils, and we have a number of affiliates, which is what we call our local groups in Oregon. And his office, we had a really good conversation with them, so I'm optimistic about them too. And then Tammy Duckworth from Illinois, she's a new senator. She was in the House before that. When she was a House member, she actually took our pledge to amend, which is what we do every election cycle, to ask candidates, whether they're incumbents or new candidates, to pledge to support the amendment. And she took our pledge to amend, but she never came on as a co-sponsor in the House, and now she's in the Senate. So we met with her office to kind of find out what's up with that, and how we can solidify that support into something tangible, not just a declaration when you're running for office. So it was not, they didn't commit, but again, we're really receptive and interested, asked good questions, met with her attorney or counsel as well. So all in all, it was a really good trip. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to deliver, but we were expecting that was unlikely. This is frankly the first time we've actually met with senators, other than a couple here and there. We've met with Bernie Sanders' office before. We've met with Elizabeth Warren's office before. We've talked to Tester's office before. But this is the year that our strategic plan has us introducing it in the Senate. So now we're zeroing in a bigger way. And we will talk a little bit later about what's coming up, but it was our expectation that we would maybe plant some seeds here in June. Then in August, during the August recess, our big ask of everyone is to try to meet with their senators. And if your House representative is not a co-sponsor yet in the House, them too. And then we will be following up with another trip to DC in September to, at that point, hopefully kind of shore up the support and make it happen. That's the goal. So it was a good trip. It was kind of a whirlwind and went fast. And I was happy to be home and needed a lot of rest afterwards, because basically these meetings are like back to back to back, and you're walking up and down the halls. But it was interesting. I mean, we just met with staffers, but folks had a lot of really good questions, and I think we did a lot of good education. Most of people are definitely familiar with Citizens United, but sort of the deeper issues underneath how Citizens United happened is something that even attorneys who work for United States senators sometimes really don't know that much about. So we had to do, a lot of explaining, but there wasn't anybody who said, well, this makes no sense. It's just a matter of, can we get them to cross the threshold when senators are not necessarily known for being down to introduce things that aren't going to pass right away. So that's kind of what we're up against with the Senate. The House is more creative and sometimes more crazy, but the Senate is more sort of by the book. Decorum matters a lot. So it was really helpful that we were able to, slap down a half a ream of paper to say these many people in your state signed the petition calling for you to introduce this amendment. So that's another thing that you can do in addition to calling your senator, regardless of whether I mentioned their name. You also can make sure to sign the motion to amend. And maybe Keon can post that link as well. And that puts you on our list, so then we can stay in touch, but kind of more importantly, adds your name to the 460-something thousand people who have already signed. And then when we go and meet with your representative, we can say, we've got this many thousands of people. And then be sure to share that link with all your friends so that they sign too. So I think that's my DC report. And we did have another Facebook Live kind of right after it was over that Fran from Philadelphia and I did. So if folks want to watch that, that's on our Facebook page if you want to go back in the moment.
Well, you were really busy. And actually, you got a great reception.
Yeah. In the past, we've been sort of more blown off, frankly, like in the earlier years. And that was not how it went this time. So, we continue to focus.
It's working.
Yeah, we're focusing still mostly on the public, and the folks in Washington, D.C. will come along, after everybody else gets it, and that's normal. We're looking for a few champions in these early, years of our strategic plan to step out and step forward, but really the critical mass will come as we continue to build the grassroots support. Yeah, so that's definitely where we focus. But it was different conversations than when we've been there in the past in the Senate. So
yeah, so that's really good news. So what else happened this month?
Let's see. Well, we did have a webinar on Constitution Day. Constitution Day is September 17th, and we've mentioned this before, but every school that gets federal funding, whether we're talking elementary, high school, or college, is responsible for doing some kind of programming on Constitution Day every year. And so this is a great opportunity to get in touch with history professors, if they still have any government or civics professors. Sometimes it's not a thing anymore. Depends on the school. I know. But history and also kind of, it doesn't necessarily have to be history, but that's, sometimes even English. But to get in touch with professors and teachers, educators in your community, and what teacher doesn't love bringing in an outside speaker for a day to hand the reins over to somebody else. So we have some materials that can be used by anybody. You don't have to be experienced educator of any kind. To teach about why we need this 28th Amendment to the Constitution and to take advantage of Constitution Day. So we did a webinar to let folks know how you can get started with that. And if you weren't able to tune in to listen to it, you can check out the recording. So we'll post that in the comments as well. And then the We the People Listen campaign is underway. But it's a flexible campaign, so if you haven't gotten started yet, but you want to, you still definitely can. And We the People Listen is a door-knocking survey campaign. So the idea is we're listening. We're not proselytizing. So we knock on people's doors. Some groups are doing it like they're showing up at farmers markets and asking folks, so you don't necessarily have to knock on doors, although there's something really powerful about greeting people on their own turf to ask them what they think about issues of democracy in this country and corporate rule and how it affects them. And it's a survey instrument, and we've got all the materials on our website, and we'll post the link to that. So if you're interested in that, it can be a great way to get started getting involved. And certainly we need more listening to each other in our country at this point. So it can also help facilitate better understanding of just kind of where people are coming from and what they're dealing with. And we don't see a lot of that. So it takes people aback a little bit, and but in a good way, and that makes people open up. Most of the time, if someone's at your door, they're selling something, and we don't even have that much of that anymore. So to just be there and say, hey, tell me what you think about this, is something that is a rare opportunity that people don't get very often, to actually say what they think. And they like to do it.
They do. They like to do it. You'll make friends.
That's right. That's right. Do you want to help me with some of these affiliate shout-outs, Laura? Maybe we can just go back and forth?
You betcha. Well, I guess I'll say it because this is now the affiliate that you belong to. Welcome back, Sacramento, California, Move to Amend. Great to have that affiliate going full steam.
Absolutely. Sometimes affiliates kind of ebb and flow. That's what happens with volunteer groups. And so our Sacramento group was kind of on hiatus for a bit, but they're back in action and have a meeting tonight. So if you're anywhere near Sacramento, you can definitely connect with us. Also, Albuquerque, New Mexico is forming an affiliate group. And right now what they have is kind of the interim step to becoming an affiliate, a We the People Amendment Working Group. But the goal is to become a full Move to Amend affiliate. And if you're in the New Mexico area, even not just Albuquerque, we would love to put you in touch with them. So let us know. Or if you know folks in Albuquerque, we can put you in touch with them. So welcome to the Albuquerque, New Mexico folks. We're looking forward to working more closely with you.
I'll say it's great to have New Mexico being represented. So that's really great. That's your home state, isn't it?
That is my home state. So both of those two kind of feel like close to home. Santa Fe, not Albuquerque, but yeah. I know Albuquerque well.
Well, congrats to the folks in Anchorage, Alaska for their good work. Of the 38 Anchorage Community Councils, 21 have passed Move to Amend resolutions. So they are well past halfway. Way to go, Anchorage.
That's great. Let's see. Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Move to Amend, has had some great outreach to the local Democratic clubs to support the We the People Amendment and have secured a couple new endorsements recently. So congratulations and good work to the folks in Tuscaloosa.
And we want to thank the Minnesota State Network for their continued work to earn organizational endorsements, their outreach to local colleges and universities, and for helping spread the word about the Democracy Convention.
And our Ohio State Network folks have been doing good work reaching out to local supporters and cultivating new affiliate organizers. So I know there's some potential new affiliates coming down in Ohio, and folks just attended a meeting in Cleveland where we already have an affiliate doing work just this month. And so just ongoing really good work to the Ohio State Network folks.
And also to the Santa Clara County Move to Amend, I got to say, you're doing a great job out there. Remember, Santa Clara County is where this all began. And they have put a really strong push on Congress, and they got Representative Jackie Spear to co-sponsor HJR 48. Way to go. They're also continuing their outreach to over 50 congressional representatives in the House. California has a lot of congressional representatives, so that's really good work happening there.
Yeah, our Santa Clara, California folks are sort of taking on, we don't have a California state network yet, but they're sort of the strongest affiliate in California, and so they are doing outreach to all the congressional reps, even those that they are not represented by. So good work, and thank you. And also a shout out to Colorado Move to Amend affiliates in Denver and in Grand Valley for their for your great work to win back Representative Ed Perlmutter as co-sponsor to House Joint Resolution 48. So he was a co-sponsor last time, and he took a while to get there again. So you all did great work, and then we kind of sealed the deal. That was actually one of the offices that we went to over on the House side when we were there earlier this month, and a 1-2 punch brought him back. So great job, Colorado. Thank you. I'm sure that would not have happened if you hadn't been bird dogging him. So thanks. And so that was June.
So July 4th is coming up. We know that. So what else is happening in July and beyond?
Yeah, so let's see. Well, as I mentioned earlier, kind of the biggest thing for July is to get ready for the August recess. So to get ready for the August recess and to get ready for the Democracy Convention. Those are the two things that we're going to be putting a lot of energy into in this month coming up, just around the corner. So We the People Lobby Month is what we call August. And we started this last year and had a good start, but we want to make it even stronger and bigger this year. As I said, we're really zeroing in on the Senate. We don't want to let the House off the hook, but we're, well over our goal for how many co-sponsors we wanted to have in the House by the end of the year. So we'll keep taking them, sure, but the Senate is really critical. And so to make sure that those visits that we had earlier this month actually, come through. What is the critical ingredient that is not there yet is constituent meetings. Because they don't really care what I think. They care what you think because you're the one who can vote them in or out, right? So, and they also care what lobbyists think, unfortunately. But you've got more sway than I do. So we want everybody to to go have in-district meetings with both of your senators. Even if your senator is a long shot, even if your senator is Ted Cruz, who's come out and said, that Citizens United is the best thing since sliced bread, still would be worth it to meet with his staff and push back on that idea. And, it might be a little bit of a frustrating meeting, but we will pat you on the back and come up with something that we will send you to thank you for doing the work. Just thought of that on the spot. But we should make sure that everybody who goes and actually has a meeting with any of their representatives gets some kind of prize. So we have all the materials to help you do this, and we are going to have a webinar on July 5th to kind of lay it all out and talk to you about how this can happen and how anyone can do this, and you'll have everything that you need. And ideally, you'll do it with a couple people, a group of people, not just one. But you can do it solo if needed, and we'll also talk about how we can put you in touch with others in your community or in your state who have indicated interest too, so we'll connect people with each other so you're not by yourself, ideally. You can also recruit friends. If there aren't other Move to Amend folks who are stepping up, then you can bring in friends yourself. But it's actually much more empowering and actually fun than you would think. I'm not a super seasoned lobbyist, and I have really learned how to do it as in working with Move to Amend, certainly at the national level, other than, local. And I thought I would hate it, but I don't at all. And, I still understand, who these folks are mostly working for. And there's some distasteful elements of the whole DC scene, not gonna lie, but you don't have to go to DC. All you have to do is go to the closest office in your state. And you're probably going to be meeting with a staffer, but since they are at home for the August recess, if you can get a good enough crew, potentially you could have a meeting with your senator yourself or your House representative. So We the People Lobby Month is coming up. It's August, but July is when we get ready. So that's a lot of what we'll be focusing on, and we really want to invite you to join us. This is one of the most important things you can do for Move to Amend this year. And if lobbying is not your cup of tea, then there are definitely other ways you can plug in too. But I would encourage everyone to think about, taking a moment to do this one task. And then you'll have had practice and maybe you'll discover that it's actually something you really like. So either way, join us on July 5th to learn all about it. And then we'll work together from there. Before I go on to the next thing, Laura, is there anything you want to add?
No, not really at all. It's just, they're people. They have an agenda. You have an agenda. It's relatively nothing to be afraid of. They work for you. You're the taxpayer. So if you take that into your head, there's nothing to worry about. Just go in and give it a shot.
And we'll have materials so that you can both, brush up on your talking points to make your pitch and everything, but also that you can leave behind so that you don't have to cover everything there. It's also pretty short. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. The most time-consuming aspect is ahead of time, maybe dogging them a little bit to actually secure that meeting. There will be a lot of other groups who are trying to, get meetings in during the August recess for other important works, but we want to make sure that they're hearing about this. So please help us make that happen. And then, as I said, we'll be putting our finishing touches on the Democracy Convention. So we already talked about that at length, but a reminder that we want to see you there in Minneapolis, August 2nd through 6th. And we have already posted the link for how to get there. So that's in August, but we'll be doing all the work for finishing it up this month. And then we're gearing up to do a good bit of barnstorming this fall. Barnstorming is what we call our national tours when we travel through a state and hit a bunch of stops and do lectures and sometimes trainings and workshops as well. So we'll be barnstorming through the rest of the year. So we'll be in Oregon in August. I'll be doing that trip. Laura and one of our other board members will be in Ohio in September. Greg, our new outreach co-director, will be doing Pennsylvania and maybe New York a little bit too in October. And then I'll be doing Arizona in November. So if you're in any of those states, make sure to keep an eye on our barnstorming page as the details firm up. And you'll also, if you sign up for our list, get emails if we're coming to your community. And if you, if you are not in one of those states, but you would like to bring Move to Amend to your town, we won't necessarily be able to get to it in 2017. It sort of depends where you are and how far away from any of our national folks you are. But we do have people all over the country, so there's a possibility always. And certainly to get into the queue for even 2018 now, folks are putting in requests. So Keon will link to the barnstorming page where you can find out the specifics of those stops, but also find out how to request a speaker in your community. So that's what's up ahead. And with that, we're done with what we wanted to say, but I noticed there haven't been a whole ton of questions, so we don't want to hang up until we give folks an opportunity to ask anything that you're wondering about, anything that we've said that needs more clarification, or anything else Move to Amend related. We're happy to answer your questions. Let us know. You can just post them in the comments, and Keon will let us know what they are. I'm also looking to see if I can see them, but I don't want to make my computer go too slow. So, Keon, any questions from anyone? No questions. All right. Well, we'll give it maybe, 30 more seconds. Now's the time. If you don't have any questions because everything was clear, then we would just say thanks for being here. And I don't know, Laura, if you could take a second to pull up a calendar so that we can tell people the next time we'll be doing our live report.
Our next live report is on July 26th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Central Eastern time.
All right, and we'll also, I think, be doing, we said, live reports from the Democracy Convention, too. So, the best thing to do is to use a little Facebook mechanism on our page to tell Facebook that you want to know whenever we go live, and then you'll get a post, and if you're in front of your computer, you will get a notification that we're live, and you can come in and join us. And
I think it'll be very exciting broadcasting live from the Democracy Convention. So, do what Kaitlin suggested you do, because it's not necessarily long broadcasts, but getting up to the minute reports and things like that for folks who aren't able to make it seems to me the perfect application for this tool.
Absolutely. So we'll be doing that too in early August. But before that, you can tune in again on Wednesday, July 26th. So it sounds like we are good. I don't see any questions. If folks who are tuning in not live want to post questions in the comments as well, we will be monitoring this post, and we can certainly answer them. So I know you all are live right now, but when people listen to the recording, please post your questions too, and we'll make sure to follow up and answer them. You can always find more information on our website, movetoamend.org. That's where you can go to sign up to get our emails and to join us through the motion to amend, which is what we present to your representatives to say that you want to see this amendment happen. And I hope that you will plug in with us for We the People Lobby Month, and that I will see you on July 5th for our webinar. And with that, I think we can eat dinner, Laura.
Yay, I'm hungry. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Have a great month ahead, and thanks for all your help this past month.
And happy Independence Day to everybody. Have a good holiday weekend.
Indeed.
Bye-bye.